It's Alec Avierinos here from Almighty Warriors, and today it's an absolute privilege and pleasure for me to have a conversation with a good friend of mine, Dr. Deirdre Dermany. Deirdre is a GP from a rural private hospital in Netcare Hospital in Kokstad, where she has treated literally hundreds and hundreds of COVID and Corona patients. And the idea today is to introduce you to Deirdre and to get some of her wisdom around health span and health span improvement and the Corona virus, and what we can do proactively to improve our odds. Deirdre, it's awesome to have you here with us today. And won't you do a little intro and tell people a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. Okay, so as you heard, my name's Deirdre Dermany. I'm a general practitioner from Kokstad area, or the East Griqualand area. I am a believer, which means that I believe that everything we do is under the lordship of Jesus Christ. That includes our work, our living, our eating, everything we do is under his lordship. Our practice is, like Alex said, a rural practice. So we do everything from obstetric, surgery, anesthesia. And then with the first wave, but especially the second wave, we did treat quite a lot of corona patients, which was quite something. It was quite, the second surge was quite bad. And I think the big thing for me, just to jump straight in there with the corona surges that we've had, is that we saw a very large risk factor in obesity. Alec, I think I've told you that if you obese, you are 113% more likely to be hospitalized, 77% more likely to be admitted to an ICU, and 48% more likely to die. So those are quite serious odds. And I think, just my passion as a doctor is to promote healthy living, and how, especially with the coronavirus, we saw that, telling people you have to lose weight was not enough. So this is where I'm coming from. I don't know if that's enough of an introduction. I'm also an endurance horse rider. I enjoy the outdoors. I love it because it's good exercise. It's in creation, so you get to talk and chat to the Lord a lot when you're out there doing those kilometers. Enjoy whitewater rafting with Alec, that once when he was visiting us. So a lot of outdoor living, as much as time allows for me. So that's maybe a little bit of who I am. I don't know, Alec.
Yeah, no, thanks, Deirdre. Appreciate that, and it's evident that your health is important to you, but the overriding driver is to bring glory to the Lord in all that you do, and in particular through your vocation. And I think if we just keep on with the corona for a moment, if you can explain just a little bit more in medical terms with regards to how obesity negatively impacts people, and also how the age-related degeneration, if I can call it that, plays a factor, a critical factor in our ability to enjoy life as we age.
Okay, so let's start with the obesity factor. There are lots of studies still out there, so nothing is conclusive as yet. But what we've seen with obesity, two factors. So corona, when you get debilitating corona, that eventually leads to respiratory failure, because that is the main cause of death with corona, is respiratory failure. There are two factors there. One is just the mechanical side of it. So mechanically, if your abdominal girth is quite large, if you've got a lot of abdominal obesity, or that fat sits around the waist, mechanically your lung capacity decreases. So we call it the FRC, or your functional residual capacity, is very much decreased. So mechanically, all the organs push up on the diaphragm, and your ability of your lung to ventilate becomes far less. So you have a hypoventilation, and it starts from the bottom up. And we see with corona, if you look at the CT scan pictures on corona, it's the basal areas of the lungs are greatly affected, and then it goes up. So in the end, we use the percentage to have a prognostic indicator of patients who are doing badly, and you do follow-up CTs, and it literally moves from the bottom up to the the top of your just below the clavicle. We call it the apex area. And patients eventually, if you have more than 75%, 80%, 90% involvement of your lungs with corona, it started from the bottom up, and you only have your apexes left, and that's why the respiratory failure then is so evident and so severe. So mechanically, if you're already starting with a deficit because you're obese, then your ability to ventilate is just already impaired or impeded. Then the next thing that was fascinating for me is that when you are obese, especially abdominal obesity, the whole process in the corona COVID-19 pathogenesis, or how the disease plays out, is something that we call interleukin 6, which is a chemical mediator that's an inflammatory mediator. Now, we all have interleukin 6, and interleukin 6 plays an important role in inflammation or the disease process. But when you are obese, you seem to have an overactive interleukin 6, and that interleukin 6 goes sky high. And we've come to use the interleukin 6 as well as a prognostic indicator of whether you're going to end up on a ventilator or end up in respiratory failure. And the problem in obesity is that interleukin 6 is deposited in the visceral fat, so in the fat around the organs. And someone who's obese has got a very high interleukin 6 already, or has got that chronic inflammatory state already. So now corona seems to interact with that and just rockets your interleukin 6, and that is what causes a cytokine storm that I think everybody has read about. So it's almost, you get to the point, a lot of it we don't understand, so some people just have this cascade of a cytokine storm that nothing seems to stop, even if you start with a dexamethasone from an early stage. It just rolls out, and but the obese people seem to have it. It's just on a different level. It just goes completely haywire. So that as far as obesity is concerned. With age as well, a big factor with age is that there are more morbid conditions, like obesity being one of them. So the older you get, the more you struggle with that fat around the waist area. The more comorbid diseases you have, like diabetes, hypertension, cardiac disease, and that also impedes your ability to fight against the coronavirus.
Those that you've mentioned now, those are all termed as lifestyle diseases, and lifestyle diseases are largely preventable through good nutrition, nutritious eating, fueling your body appropriately, and exercise, which is what we're all about with at Almighty Warriors, is looking after your body in order for you to be able to live stronger for longer, and to be more effective in the kingdom. Can you give us some simple ways to work out your body mass index and your whether you're at risk or not? There's a lot of people in the modern world at the moment. We're way too sedentary, and we are largely a large portion of the population is overweight, but that's become the norm.
Yes.
So I would like you to just explain so that people can simply determine whether they're at risk and whether they need to own up to the fact that they have got a problem that they can do something about proactively themselves.
So, for the younger generation or those who love their cell phones, iPads, or whatever technical stuff they use, I'm a dinosaur, but you can just go in on Google and do a BMI calculator and put in your parameters, and it will spit out your BMI for you. Simply speaking, your BMI is a weight to height ratio. I have a simple way as well. So I'm 167, for example. So if you take the 167, if you take 67 kgs, minus 10 is 57 kgs. So more or less a healthy weight ratio for me is 57 to 67. I won't be above 24, 25 then. That is your ratio where you are deemed to be normal, of normal weight. That's the one way to do it. I also, like Alec, you and I have discussed this. There's another simple way. If you take your height and you divide it by 2, so 167 divided by 2 would be 83 and a half. That would be, if your waist is more than 83 and a half, then you are at risk to go into the category of overweight and obese. So that is too much. And it's interesting what you say about the norm. A lot of people I know with patients of mine, if you say, but you are a little bit overweight, then they are quite shocked because they don't think that they are overweight. So people have got a wrong impression. And I think sometimes it's because the average is so overweight at the moment. People look at other people and think, oh, well, I'm not as fat as that one, so I can't possibly be overweight.
Yeah.
And that's not what we're asked to do. Is, we're responsible for ourselves, and we should look at ourselves and see what you are at. So just to get back to corona and weight, is that the research also show now that you don't have to be obese to be at an increased risk. It's even overweight people are at risk. So people might not look at you and think you're quite fat, but overweight gets to the point of 25 to 30. So if your BMI falls in 25 to 30, you are falling already into the overweight category. The good news is that we can do something about it.
Absolutely.
I think, Alec, on this point, I would like to say, for me as a doctor, it's very frustrating and debilitating to have a patient and say, you know what, everything that you've come to me with today is because of a weight issue. Or if you could just lose the 10 of the 50 kgs that you have to lose, you would already feel so much better. And you almost know that that patient is not going to be able to do that lifestyle change that needs to happen. And it's quite frustrating. And you simply just don't have the time to go and say, you're going to do this and this and this, or let's do the following program. And that's where having met you, Alec, has been fantastic, because it feels to me that you're creating, or I know you're creating a spot and an environment where people can take all of this knowledge, the eating, the lifestyle, the exercise, combine it, and there's hope. Because at the end, none of us like to be overweight, and none of us want to be overweight. We actually all know that it's unhealthy, but that helplessness of actually doing something about it is, I think, where you come in. And it's wonderful because, you're using your faith and your relationship with the Lord Jesus Christ to give these patients or these people a hope that there's light at the end of the tunnel, and that's fantastic. So
Thank you. I think the key there is that there needs to be an overriding desire. You need to have a passion and a purpose based on your faith with the Lord, to bring glory to the Lord in all that we do, and to be able to serve others. And you can best do that if you've got a healthy, strong body. And there's absolutely no reason why, with some preventative maintenance in the way of your nutrition and your exercise, that you can't live healthier and stronger for longer. And the Bible is full of examples of some really old people that were really strong and capable. So yeah, I appreciate the compliment, and I think ultimately my vision for Almighty Warriors is that churches will put together a team that to take a holistic approach at looking after people's health. So you have the pastor there looking after your spiritual growth, a medical doctor, a nutritionist, and then a personal trainer. So the person that has got a lifestyle disease or an obesity problem can start off with a medical doctor who can make recommendations to the nutritionist and the personal trainer, who will then on an ongoing basis work on the physical body, but the pastor gets to coach and encourage you to you know basically glorify the Lord and be grateful for the body that you've got, and live out to the best of your ability what you were created to become, to be all you can be. Deirdre, could you give people tips on what they can do to be proactive with regards to putting themselves in a better position, not only for Corona, but for life in general, and in particular aging. So I think immediately of sarcopenia and the natural loss of muscle mass as you age, and that you have to proactively do something to counter that. We often hear of elderly getting frail and falling over, injuring themselves, and that's the beginning of the end. Just some tips from a Dr. Duminy.
So let's start with the sarcopenia, or older people. As women, especially women who haven't been active in their lives, you get the bone loss density, which means that when you fall, you break bones easily. The pelvis, femur, necks, whatever, your long bones are quite prone then to breaking. And the one thing that prevents that is not to go and now start running and get impact on those bones, because the bones need impact to lay down that calcium, but to start with strength training, so muscle training. And it's never too late. I know 65-year-olds that go and they start a training and they can regain some of that muscle mass. So muscle mass is quite important. And the way to counter that loss is to exercise. And by exercise, I think we all have this impression that I'm fat, I must go and run 10Ks, and that way I will, once I get to this cardiovascular extreme exercise, I'm going to be able to lose the weight that I would like to lose. And it's not about that. It's about targeted exercises, targeting muscle groups. So my one advice would be to do exercise that does not impact for an older person on the joints so much, because the joints are getting very frail and sore, and you might actually injure yourself more than anything else. And I'm definitely not advocating jumping up and down for older people, but that doesn't disqualify you from exercise. So there are ways and means to get out there. Someone who's also quite overweight, they can't actually jump up and down. There's just too much impact on the joints. But
Sure.
by activating your basal metabolic rate, and by doing that, the way to do that is to get the muscle groups going. So you can basically do isometric exercises, and by doing that, you just strengthen the bone, you strengthen the joint health as well, because joints are all surrounded by muscle groups. And you can increase the longevity of that joint before you actually have to. Unfortunately, we live in a broken world. It's unfortunately part of the fall of man. So our things do break, our joints do go old, but you can prevent that degeneration as much as we possibly can by the exercises that we do, and that's isometric. So that's one thing. The other thing that I would really like to advise people on, I think sugar and white flour is a big culprit in our diet today. Everything that we eat, any processed food, has got a lot of sugar in. If you've been to America, you would see that the Americans have got a real obesity problem, but I've never seen so many diet foods on shelves in my life. But if you go and look at the content of what's in these diet foods, it's all low on fat but high on sugar. So I think sugar is a big culprit in our diet today. So watch what you eat.
Yeah, you want to eat nutritionally dense foods, so your proteins, vegetables, fruits,
yes.
natural,
Unprocessed as much as you
unprocessed.
can. Yeah, our lifestyles lead to no time, quickly buying something, and it's all processed. And if you actually go and look at that, it's unhealthy. It's got way too much unhealthy starches, unhealthy sugars in. So that would be my one advice as well, is watch what you eat. Sugar and white flour, patients ask me, what must I eat, especially ladies over the age of 40. It just seems to pile on the abdominal girth, the belly fat. I call it the fat pad under the umbilicus, just increases and increases, and that does happen with age. But that again, to a large degree, that is what we eat, and we're eating processed foods that's got too much sugar in. And other thing as well in today's life is that people drink too much alcohol, and that also sits in the fat pad, the belly pad.
Yeah,
It's too much.
yeah. I think I just want to emphasize what Deirdre is saying there. That while exercise is key, your fat and your body fat percentage, etc., is way more as a result of your nutrition and your bad eating habits than it is with your lack of exercise.
Yes.
So we aim to first improve what we eat, and once we're fueling the body appropriately with healthy proteins, vegetables, fruits, etc., and as natural as possible, as little highly processed and refined carbohydrates as possible, and then from there we can move on to exercise, and don't underestimate just going for a walk and progressively increasing the time that you spend walking. And if you limited in time, then you can walk with a backpack and put some weight in it. But you are low impact on the joints, and you getting that heart rate up, elevating it just slightly, and yeah, that makes a big difference to your overall health. But I think,
Anecdotally, just on that, Alec, and I think this is just to speak to those people who sit in an office the whole day and are pressed for time, because a lot of people can say, but I simply just don't have the time. And I can attest to that fact, and I can sympathize with that. I also don't have time, but I had a big race where I had to do 80k the one day and 80k the next day, so that's 160 kilometers on horseback. And people might think that the horse does all the work, but you actually get quite tired. And I didn't have time to exercise really myself. So what I got to doing is that in my day, because I work from 7:30 in the mornings, I get to office sometimes at 7, and you get home by 7, and that's dark, is I would find just a few minutes, 7 minutes to 11 minutes, and just do some isometric exercise. And I just, like, I have 7 minutes maybe during lunch, or 11 minutes, and I would get on the bed or get on the floor and just do a few stomach exercises, or leg or arms. And I must say, it's the best I ever felt after 160 kilometers on a horse. And it's just to say to people, please don't use time as an excuse not to exercise.
Yeah.
Even if you find 7
micro
minutes,
workouts.
11 minutes, just
Yeah.
do those micro workouts. That's
Yeah.
the one thing. The other thing is, when you get into the discipline, because you spoke about nutrition, and the largest part of wanting to live healthily is to have healthy eating habits. But exercising actually adds to the discipline
Yes.
of eating healthily. I often, when I go for a run, I think, Well, you know what? This is not so easy, but it would be easier if there was 1 kg less here. So it encourages you to just be disciplined. Or when you want to eat that big fat piece of cake, which I often do eat, but sometimes you think, well, I didn't do all that running for nothing. So let me rather not have this piece of cake
Yes,
because the point being that exercise does help with the discipline of good eating, and the discipline of good eating helps with the discipline of exercise. The other discipline that I would like to add here is spending time with the Lord. If you
yeah,
can start your day with that, the rest falls into place as well.
absolutely.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's my 2 cents worth.
Deirdre, thank you. It's been a privilege to chat to you, and we hope that the information that we have provided to the listeners will encourage them and spur them on to being more proactive about looking after their personal health
Yes.
and not abdicating that responsibility to pills and procedures and doctors, but to realize that they need to do something
Yeah.
about improving their health themselves.
Yeah, there's unfortunately no quick fix. So
No,
you get asked for pills to help, and I tell patients it didn't take 2 weeks to get to where you are now. So unfortunately, it's not going to take 2 weeks. Pills do not work. It's the discipline of lifestyle changes. Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
And Deirdre, thank you for this time we could spend together, and we hope this has been beneficial to everybody listening. Um, if you go to almightywarrior.me, you'll be able to find the show notes on this, and you'll also be able to watch this on our channel, on Impact's YouTube channel, and on their Facebook page too. Thank you. Thanks,
Pleasure.
Deirdre.
Pleasure. It's an honor, Alec.